Rachel C Knitting channel. My name is Rachel, I am your host, and I'm a knitter based out of Ottawa, Canada. And this channel is my chatty outlet to talk all things knitting with occasional guest appearances by other crafts. Today is Saturday, November 18th. We have an hour until the sun sets. It's 3 p.m. And so I am already nervous about whether or not I'm going to lose the light before I get through the mountain of things I have to show you and talk about. But I'm feeling good about podcasting today. I'm ready to get back on the horse and we're just gonna do it. And you know what, maybe the sun's gonna set and this will turn into more of like a cozy vibes chat with less than ideal lighting, but I'm already dealing with less than ideal image upload quality. Which is part of the reason why I haven't been uploading. I've been very frustrated with how it seems the quality of the image of my videos seems to kind of go down when I've been uploading them to YouTube lately, and I haven't been able to find a fix. And it sucks to post something that's not as good for you guys as I know it could be, but that's neither here nor there. I think before I get into my finished objects, one of which you can see I'm clearly wearing, I just want to remind or tell you guys, maybe for the first time if you are a new viewer or you missed my last couple episodes, but Erin of the Courier Knits podcast and I are hosting the Great Canadian Make/Knitalong on Instagram. And in order to participate, make something, knitting, crochet, weaving, spinning, all are welcome. All the fiber crafts are welcome, either using Canadian yarn or with a pattern by a Canadian designer. And we're pretty loose about the terms of like Canadian. And Erin talked about this in a previous episode. She's been a lot better about recording and posting on a regular basis than me. And has talked about this make-along and different projects and prizes that she has and the motivation that, you know, she brings for her half of hosting this. But this is not meant as some type of nation building or nationalist exercise. Erin and I just feel really strongly about supporting local and not just being focused on things that are new and shiny and pretty from faraway places. So we chose Canadian as an easy catch-all term for where she and I live and what's local and available and underappreciated around us. But yeah, this is not meant to be some type of like strong endorsement of the Canadian government, past or present, and really want to make sure that we're just talking about wool here. But the Great Canadian Knit-along is running until the end of the year. Whips are welcome. Just post using the hashtag the Great Canadian MKAL. I know that's normally Mystery Knit-along, but we mean it as Make/Knit-along here. Showing your project, and I've seen some people who don't necessarily have access to Canadian yarns or wool or want to knit from stash make projects with Canadian designers like Venetia of the Woolly Worker, who made a very, very cute sweater by a designer I've had my eye on for a long time, so that was really fun as part of this. So as a quick reminder, we have a whole host of prizes associated with this. Some are patterns, some are yarn. And thanks to all the people who have contacted us after we announced this to donate prizes, such as Honeybird Studios, who very generously donated 2 copies of her Birkland shawl pattern as giveaway prizes, and Denise, thank you for offering up a project bag. It's very, very generous of you, as well as I understand there's a sock set available as a prize that's super, super cute. But as a reminder, Erin has also several skeins of vintage Canadian wool up for grabs as a prize, as she is, of course, in my opinion, the resident thrifting yarn queen of knitting YouTube. And also a really gorgeous skein of a Knitting Loft in-house yarn based out of Toronto, Canada. And then for me, I am gonna make like 2 little prize packs where you get a skein of yarn, pattern of a Canadian designer of your choosing. I'll send you the Ravelry download link. I've done it before, don't worry. And then some Canadian stitch markers, and there's going to be 2 of those. And the first is a reminder. It's unskeined because I am really bad at hanking up yarn, but this is Emily C. Gillies Maritime Aran weight yarn. It's 100% woolen spun Canadian wool in this gorgeous color sea glass. I have a whole sweater in this yarn in another color. It's one of my favorite yarns of all time, and I love Emily's color sense and sensibility. And because it's woolen spun, it's pretty generous. This is 219 meters for 100 grams of Aran weight yarn, and it's actually really freaking soft. I mean, I think I would wear this and a cowl. I think you could get some mittens out of this, a hat, a cowl, or it would be really gorgeous contrast in the color work sweater. And it's called the Maritime Aran Base because this yarn is raised, sheared, milled, spun, and dyed. I think milled and spun are kind of redundant to say in the same list, but all in the Maritimes region of Canada before being sent to me, and then I will send it to you. So this is one prize representing the eastern part of Canada. And then last month here in Ottawa, a local dyer, Alley Cat Yarns, had their annual trunk show at one of our 2 local yarn stores, Wabi Sabi, in a neighborhood called Hintonburg, which is very cute. If you ever visit, I recommend going to Hintonburg. And Alley Cat Yarns has an Ontario sock base, which is all Canadian fibers and then spun in Ontario and then dyed by Alley Cat fibers or yarns here in Ottawa. But it's 80% Dorset and Cheviot mix, which are 2 different wool breeds that are very common in Canada, and then 20% mohair because there are a few mohair flocks in Ontario. And this is the colorway K. And I got this one for you guys because this is an all natural, no nylon, no superwash sock yarn, non-superwash sock yarn. The mohair is supposed to add a lot of strength, and Cheviot and Dorset are 2 long wool, very hard wearing wool breeds. So I hope that this will make a really beautiful pair of socks or whatever else you'd like. And this is the color K, but I really wanted to get this one because I wanted to show that hand-dyed yarn can still be really, really beautiful and have that rich depth of color and just gorgeous, gorgeous appearance on non-superwash bases, and I wanted to share that with some of you. So this is 394 yards and 110 grams, so I guess it's a little bit thicker, which is nice. I, just as a little preview to acquisitions, also bought myself a skein of this in the trunk show, and this is the color Emerald. And it's really nice, and I'm happy I got it. So I also got pine stitch markers. Okay, that's the bag. I guess you can't really see them, but they're from Firefly Notes, who is a stitch marker and just notions maker on the west coast of this country. So I wanted to show different parts, highlight different makers, and maybe bring some people onto your radar that you might have not otherwise been aware of. And then one of you will win this, one of you will win the other. You guys will both get stitch markers and you'll both get patterns. But that is the Great Canadian Make-Along. I highly recommend, if you're interested in checking out the hashtag, looking at other people's projects. When I'm on Instagram, I try and share the ones that I see to my story, but as we all know, I am not often on Instagram. Okay, so without much further ado, I will start showing you what I've been working on, but I thought it was good to mention the make-along at the beginning because most of the projects I'm currently working on kind of count as entries. Of course, I will not be eligible to win any of the prizes because I'm hosting this make-along and sending you guys these prizes, but a big force for me in wanting to do this was to knit from stash all the Canadian wools I have been accumulating. And I am happy that we did this, Erin and I, because I definitely have been. So my very first finished object is the Lana vest by Irene Lynn. I think I have been mispronouncing her name in previous episodes. I think I have been saying Irene Lim, but it is Irene Lynn, L-I-N. She is a Taiwanese knitting designer who makes super gorgeous garments and everything. And I did this as part of a mini knit along with my friend Charlotte, and we called it Fisherman Knits Fall, and we both knit different cabled vest patterns by Irene Lynn. She did the Myra vest, I did the Lana vest, and I did this in a Canadian wool from a man named Richard. His brand is Les Moutons de Richard, or Richard's Sheep, in an unnamed colorway. and I'm obsessed with it. I love this so much. I think this is going in my top 5 projects of all of 2023. This, I don't know why it took me so long to make a vest, but I'm gonna get on my knees and kneel so that you can hopefully see this whole thing, and then I will get into the details. And I love this thing. I love that it kind of goes long over the shoulders. I did reduce the amount of ease significantly because this does not have a very broad size range in either the small body or large body side of the spectrum, so adjustments had to be made for it to fit the way I wanted it to. And I think I made it shorter than the pattern specifies, and as you can see, there's a really glaring line right here where I joined another skein that was kind of a different color than the one that I did the fronts for. Now I'm just showing you the things I did wrong. One of these cables I started sooner than the other. So if you look like somewhere along here, there's a cable, where is it? Is it this one? Yeah. I started this cable sooner than this cable, so that doesn't line up very nicely. And all of these things were demoralizing as I knit the pattern, and then I blocked it and I started wearing it, and I simply do not care. I love this thing. I even wore this 2 days in a row to the office in 2 completely different outfits. I didn't care that I was being an outfit repeater while I wore different outfits. I was just like, I made a vest and I want everybody to know about it. I love this thing so much. It feels like a hug. It has a beautiful, beautiful heft, but still a lot of drape, and it is so comfortable, and I find it very wearable with a lot of different things in my workwear wardrobe as well as my casual wardrobe, but mostly I've just been wearing it over this like poofy sleeve t-shirt and a pair of jeans in my everyday life. I have seen a few other people making this pattern at the same time, which just kind of supports my every knitting podcaster shares like the same 3 brain cells. We're just doing the same things without realizing it theory, but is really, really nice because I think everybody should know about this pattern. I know Amy of Knee Knits is also making one, so is Vinicia of The Woolly Worker, and I hope that you, if you're interested, I do recommend it. I found this pattern to be very clear, and I found it to be so much fun to knit. And it's an 18 stitch gauge, which means that it goes by very, very quickly. And as far as cable patterns go, I was first a little intimidated when I saw this design, and I would like to say I don't think that you should be. I don't know if it would be the easiest first ever cabled pattern, but most of the cables cross at the same intervals. So you're not having to keep track of different intervals for when you should be cabling. Things are kind of always happening at very easily memorizable rates. And that's also true for shaping for the neckline and the back. It gets a little bit trickier for the front because you have the V-neck and the armhole shaping, but for the back panel, which you start with, you're increasing to shape the armholes at a very easy rate to memorize, and you're crossing the cables at a very easy rate to memorize. And so after the first like hour or 2 of knitting this, I barely had to check the chart. That changed a little bit again for the front, just because there's a little bit more going on, but I was able to do this while like making conversation with my roommates or watching TV, not during meetings at work, but during other things where I could keep the chart up. The only thing that I would say is there's written instructions, like every row of this is written out, as well as there's a chart. I found the chart a million times easier to work with, but I recommend reading through the written instructions and making notes on the cable chart, just like on the row that you're at, where you need to go check the written instructions, because there are a couple points where there are additional instructions in the written sections that you need and that you wouldn't get just by looking at the cable pattern, which the designer does note. But if you're like me and you just scroll to the bottom to find a chart, you might miss that, especially since there is a lot of text. But I really enjoyed this. I wear it quite a bit. I now want other vests with a similar silhouette, and ones that kind of are knit at a thicker weight, that are kind of boxy, and that don't stay here, that kind of go on my arm and the shoulder. I don't know why I'm blanking on a more eloquent way of saying that, but I think you can see what I mean. And I really like that this is so temperature regulating. I feel very warm and cozy here. And because this is, I'll get to the yarn in a bit, but because of the consistency of the yarn, it has a nice heft to it that feels almost like I'm wearing a weighted blanket. but with the V-neck and the big armhole and the lack of sleeves, it is so comfortable. It is so temperature regulating. I walk a fair amount of the way to work because, like, you know, you walk to the bus stop, take the bus, and you walk whatever. And then I work in a freezing office. So often I work up quite a sweat getting to the office, especially since I'm usually kind of hustling in case I'm running late. And then I'm sitting in the office and I'm really, really hot for the first 20 minutes and then I'm freezing for the rest of the day. Not when I wear this thing because this keeps me from overheating on the way there. And this keeps me warm, but not too hot the rest of the day. So I have another pattern by a Japanese designer. I can picture it so clearly in my head, so I'm going to put a photo and then clarify. I want to say it's the Chosky. I know it starts with a C and ends with an I. I want to knit in a dark gray to have a second version of this type of garment in my wardrobe. The only thing that I find regrettable about this pattern is its lack of size inclusivity. I knit the smallest size and I barely fit into the range, and I'm usually like a third or fourth size knitter when it comes to North American patterns graded to, like, I think the American Craft Yarn Standards Council or whatever. I understand that it's a little bit tricky to modify this sort of cabled design, but I think there's only like 4 or 5 sizes, covers a very narrow range of sizes. And what I did was first I thought I would remove stitches from these purl sections here to make it smaller. My friend Charlotte talked me down from that because she said if you don't have those appropriate amount of purls in between your cables aren't going to pop, Rachel, and Charlotte was right. Then I thought maybe I would remove some from this, is it double moss stitch or iris moss stitch that you have going down that kind of is where you do your increases. But I didn't feel like I had enough. Like, Charlotte and I cast this on a patio while we were drinking tea and talking enough that we were both very distracted, which is not great for a cast on, but very fun for a 2-person friend knit along in September on the equinox. So I just didn't have it in me to then like calculate all the things I would have to change if I did decrease it here as opposed to in the purl stitches. So I just cast on as I was supposed to. And then I neglected the last, I think, 1 or 2 rounds of increases for both the front and the back here for the shaping to keep it from being too wide. Because I think this was supposed to give me like 12 inches of positive ease. I didn't want that. I wanted less. And I think I ended up with 8 inches of positive ease, maybe 10, and I'm very, very happy with it. And then I did some, when I was connecting for the front and the back, I did some decreasing. Like, I decreased so I connected the back panel to the front panel. I did the underarm cast on stitches, whatever. And then the first round where I knit the cast on stitches, I knit 2 together, the last stitch of the back panel with the first stitch of the cast on stitches, and I did the same with the last stitch of the cast on stitches and the first of each of these front panels to just remove a few of the stitches. And I think by omitting those last increase rows and then just decreasing by 4 stitches and then another 2 stitches in this join phase, I was able to remove enough of the ease that I was happy with it. I also had to go down 2 needle sizes to get something close to gauge, and even then my gauge was a little bit big. That might have been because of the yarn I was using, which I will get to now. But I've already waxed poetic like once or twice about this yarn, and I don't think Richard knows that my friend Charlotte and I are his 2 biggest fans, but we are. I have exactly 1 skein left, and it is my most inconsistent skein, which is why I left it out. For some reason, this yarn is so... First of all, I love it. It's 50% mohair, 50% wool. It is a 3-ply, and it is worsted weight. And I have 1 left. And most of them were so consistent, very little vegetable matter, not very thick and thin. And then 2 of them have like so many thick and thin bits, like that. And so much vegetable matter for another thick and thin bit. But I have a whole skein of it left, and I'm so, like, what do I do with it? Maybe I will make more mittens. But this, first of all, beautiful to knit with. It was so pleasant. he's a pretty small producer. He lives in Saint-Justine-de-Newton in Quebec. He has a Facebook page, which I will link if you would like to purchase some of his yarns. And by following his Facebook page, I see that he goes to quite a few craft markets around Quebec and Ontario. But he was in like the small and emerging producers tent at Twist Fibre Festival that I went to with my friend Charlotte in the summer. And that was a great festival. His yarn was very reasonably priced considering it's locally produced, 50% wool, 50% mohair, and then presumably hand-dyed. And it was beautiful to knit with. It was such a pleasant knitting experience, and it blocked out phenomenally. And with the mohair content, it has this beautiful, beautiful shine to it. And the drape, it's just such a good yarn, and I want to make more vests with it. I do think that this would have been too heavy to make a sweater in, unless it was with a lot less ease. But then I don't really want a really thick sweater that's fitted to my body. But for more vests in the future, for more mittens or house socks or hats, I will be calling upon Richard and his sheep. And at first, this really obvious line between the two skeins really, really bothered me. I was just annoyed that I didn't think, because this skein that I used for the two fronts is the only one that's lighter than the rest. Everything else looks fine, but because I didn't realize that, I put it in the most prominent position. It's more obvious on camera than it is when I wear it, and because it falls right where like the fullest part of my bust is, it just it doesn't look like it's two different dye lots in person. It looks like the light is hitting it one way on my chest and then a different way on my stomach. And I love this vest. I simply love this vest. And Charlotte also loves hers, in case you're wondering. I think guesses if you wanted to modify this to make it either bigger or smaller, I would add stitches or remove them from this double moss stitch, and then I would maybe add stitches to the purl sections if you wanted to make this bigger. And then beyond that, I really think that you would be able to knit this with minimal changes to the pattern. I also think that if you wanted to make it smaller, you could probably remove a little bit of this here and then also just do what I did and skip the last couple rounds of increases and then do some creative decreasing at the underarm join section. And you could get something a bit smaller. But turns out I love Irene Lynn's pattern writing style. I think that this was very well done. It seemed to be kind of written not just to create a beautiful design, but also to have an enjoyable knitting experience. So I appreciate that. And I love this yarn. So after talking about this for a long time, I'm going to whip through some of my smaller and less interesting finished objects. The first of which is this pretty basic ribbed ear warmer headband with a twist that I knit in leftover yarn from a kit that I got around this time last year that I used. It was actually meant to be like a mitten and this thing kit, but I used it to make this just, free-handed self-drafted dicky, which I wear quite a bit in the winter because my winter coat has a V that goes to about here. And then if I wrap my scarf around my neck, then there's a little bit of space here. So I use this sometimes instead to cover my chest and my neck and be a little bit more lightweight, which I appreciate. And then I had some left over, and I'd been meaning to make this for a while, but by the time I started it, it was spring and I was just kind of not interested in knitting winter accessories, so this kind of fell by the wayside. But I wanted something for the chillier mornings, but when I didn't want to wear a full hat, and also because in my ideal version of myself, I engage more in winter sports than I currently do, and to engage in winter sports more, I want something that keeps my ears and forehead a little bit toastier, but allows me to put my hair up. And so I made this. It took me an evening and a bit because it's just rib. It's knit at a pretty chunky gauge. It's a pretty simple, basic, I think I cast on 18 stitches. And I mean, it's a pretty standard project, I think, that a lot of beginners make. And I liked it, and it helped me stash bust a little bit, and now I have something that matches my dicky. So that was really good. Got some yarn out of stash, and has just been something that I've been meaning to do for a long time because I wanted the finished object. And now I have it. And of course, now it's gotten, well, for the most part, a little bit too cold to wear it. But if I act on my dream of snowshoeing more this year, I'm ready and I have it, so that'll be really nice and is a good and easy gift. But I don't think any of you guys need to be reminded of how good and easy your warmer headbands are. I think they're kind of a staple for beginners and for gifts. And then I also made a bunch more dryer balls. My one and only vlog that I've ever published on this channel was about this time last year when I went on this, I went on a similar thing this year, I just didn't film it, where it started getting cold and I was struck with the overwhelming urge to nest, so I spent a lot of time cleaning, putting stuff away. I donated a bunch of yarn, I sold some yarn, and then I was on a stash busting kick, which is part of why I made this. But another part of that stash busting kick was last year I had a lot of success with making felted dryer balls to replace those bounce dryer sheets that people buy and use to dry things faster, take out the static, and I think make them a little bit softer. I'm not sure. And so I made more dryer balls. I have another one of this rolling around somewhere in this house. I didn't have the time to find it. Like I said, we're losing daylight here, people, but I think these are a great gift. If you have any type of white elephant exchange or a Secret Santa where you have like a really low budget, or you have a really eco-conscious friend or someone who has to do a lot of laundry, I recommend these guys. So you have several different ways of making them. I go into this in depth because I was experimenting with it for the first time in this vlog that I made last year, and this is not a comprehensive tutorial that I'm about to share with you, but you have a few different ways of making these. I have had success 3 different ways. 1, I cut up an old sweater, wrapped it up into balls, felted it that way. 2, this is literally a ball of yarn that I felted. I took the yarn and I wrapped it really tightly into a ball and then I felted it. And then this is wool stuffing that I got. It was roving, undyed roving that I got last year because for a little while my friend and I thought that we would maybe make some felted Christmas ornaments. So I got some really, really inexpensive white wool stuffing, just like fluff, from Wabi Sabi that I didn't end up using and actually didn't even end up picking up until the spring, so oops. So I made 2 with that, and then I made 2 with the leftover Knit Picks Simply Wool worsted yarn that I made my Lakes pullover by Ozetta in the winter. And these turned out beautifully. So did this one, but this is undyed roving. Like, it's gonna be, I think, a little bit more likely to be easy. And I recommend all 3 ways of making dryer balls that way. I have found that alpaca felts really, really nicely, and so do the softer wools, longer wools, and ones that are tougher, and like the ones that you think of as scratchier, those don't felt as nicely, in part because of the characteristics of long wool, which are good for some situations, but not for making felted dryer balls. But, okay, so here's the thing. I will include some tutorials or links that I find helpful for making dryer balls in the description box. But basically, what I do is I put the roving around itself in a ball really tightly, and then I put it in an old tight. Or I do the exact same thing with yarn, or I do the exact same thing with an old sweater. And they're really fast and they're really easy. The thing is you then have to wash them and dry them on like hot water and then high heat for a while. So what I do is I make these and I have them prepared, and what you do is then you tie them in an old tight or nylon that you have that maybe has a run in it or that you just don't wear. And what I do is anytime I have a load of like our kitchen towels, our dish rags, our bath mat, my slippers, things that I wash on high heat and then dry on high heat because I either want them to have like be as clean as possible and or don't care about the long, like I'm not gonna ruin them by drying them on high heat. I throw these in with them, and then I throw these in on every load of laundry I do for a little bit afterwards, unless I think it's gonna be a problem to have a little bit extra lint in there, and it felts them over time. I find that to just be the easiest and most economical way of doing things, and I just have them lying around the washer or like my laundry bin in the meantime. And then they felt really nicely. A few tips beyond go for things like alpaca or merino or not Dorset. to felt is I would recommend making them a little bit bigger. This is just a matter of personal preference, but this is about tennis ball sized. This is a bit bigger. I have smaller ones just because sometimes I didn't have enough yarn to make a bigger one and things shrink when you felt them. But when they're bigger, they're less likely to get caught in like the sleeve of a t-shirt or something in the dryer, because these like to hitchhike out of the dryer into your clothing. And so often my roommates and I have a moment of, where are all the dryer balls? And then we check our laundry and they're in the laundry. Which is funny. That's just a matter of personal preference. I also recommend using undyed wools because that way you don't risk the dye transferring onto your clothing if you dry things often on high heat. I have not experimented with dyed wools to see what would happen. That's why I use this undyed roving and the undyed wool from my lakes. But if you have undyed or light colored yarns lying around that are non-superwash and you have no idea what to do with them and they're just taking up space in your house, I recommend making dryer balls. It's so easy, it's so fast, and they make a good like gift for certain situations. I will be giving some of these to people in my life who have asked for them, and they last forever. And then if they're 100% wool, I mean, I can compost them here in Ottawa. I don't know about every municipal waste guideline, but we can use these in our garden and we can use these in city compost here in Ottawa. But I'm a big fan of dryer balls. I just think they're great. My friend bought some from a craft market last year in Montreal for her mother-in-law, where they made them and then they felted little designs on them, which made them prettier using another shade of undyed wool. So that's an option if you want to get a little bit more creative, or you like to needle felt, or you want to make them prettier, but you don't have to. And yeah, I have made them. It's also just sometimes nice because when I made them out of old sweaters, it was my first 2 ever garment attempts that were completely unwearable, but made out of good wool that I could use to felt. And it was nice to kind of have those sweaters live on in something that I use every week and my roommates use every week when we dry things, as opposed to just sitting, taking up space, gathering dust underneath my bed as a monument to my early ambition as a knitter. So, dryer balls, quick, easy gift. I recommend, but admittedly not the most exciting of things. A more interesting finished object. I finished my porchlight socks. Where's the other one? Despite this little bit of yarn, I just have to trim that. I don't know why I haven't yet. I made these out of a Studio Ghibli inspired sock set by Big Little Yarn Co. It was a limited edition one, and this is the sock set that was inspired by Spirited Away. The main color is the empty restaurant, and the contrast, which I used for these moths, is Rikai. The Japanese word for spirit is my understanding. I think they're beautiful, and they were a lot of fun to make. I liked the moth motif. You can see I improved. This is my second sock, and the baubles are a lot better on this one than they are on this one. But I found that this really gorgeous hand-dyed sock yarn made this vanilla sock go by a lot faster, and I really appreciated it. And I have kept these crisp and nice for you. Why does this one look so much smaller than this one? I guess I didn't block these very evenly. It is a little bit longer, the other one. Hope that isn't a problem. The beautiful yarn made these easier to keep going in an otherwise kind of boring sock once the moth motifs were done. I have quite a bit of this left over, and I'm looking forward to making a second pair of probably some other type of sock with them. But really happy with this project because I wanted to make sure that this yarn did not immediately go into stash to never be used, and 2, because I've had 52 weeks of socks for a year and a half, and I've made 2 socks out of them, not including the porchlight socks, but they were both as gifts, and I have not made myself any of the sock patterns, which there are 52 of them, so that's kind of like, Rachel, come on, you got this book, use the book. So I'm very happy, and they're nice. So I started a new job in September, which is part of the reason why I've been away. It's been a bit of an adjustment. It's been a good one. Don't get me wrong. But, you know, that's kind of a big change. And My old job, we didn't have a lot of Zoom meetings or calls because it was a lot more like independent work, and then we'd all just check in when we were in the office on office days. But my new job has a lot more calls and meetings and regular updates. And that includes on Zoom. So I've had more time to work on like no thinking projects, which have mostly been these different types of socks, so that I can drop it really, really easily and take notes if I need to, but then I have something to do with my hands the whole time. And I have other knitters on my new team and other people who understand that it's a good way for me to focus. So far it's been a non-issue, and I hope it stays that way. But it's been really helpful for my gift knitting to have all of those meetings and calls. Okay, next, I have 2 half-finished objects to show you, which will be our transition into whips. The first, speaking of gift knitting, is my roommate's birthday is the beginning of December, one of my 2 roommates, and she has indicated she'd be very happy to receive socks. So, socks she shall receive. Here's one. I'll show you the half without the bit of yarn sticking out. And this is made from a sock set that actually I received as a gift from Erin of the Korean Knits podcast that I'm co-hosting the Great Canadian Make-Along with. And it is a sock set from a creative knitter who is an indie dyer based out of I want to say the Waterloo-Kitchener area, but I might just be assuming that's true because Erin is from the Kitchener-Waterloo area. But this is the colorway Let's Stay Home, and it's a 75-25 classic sock blend. And isn't it just so gorgeous? This is a 3x1 rib sock, and I wanted to do these fun stripes at the top. What is this kind of sock called? Is it a varsity sock? Is it a camp sock? But you know what I mean. I thought that would be a really cute way to use this sock set. I have been actually really impressed by the dye job on this. So thank you again, Erin, but it's kind of fun that she received this as a gifted product and then she gave it to me because she doesn't knit socks, and then I'm using it to make a pair of socks for my roommate. So it's like a gift 3 times over, and it's been really nice. But I don't know if you can tell, but this is not undyed. It's a kind of a slate or pewtery kind of gray. And then you have that echoed throughout this. And I'm just thinking about how much time it must have taken to layer those dyes and get all of it correct. And I'm impressed. And it's been very uniform and consistent. And they're really pretty, and they're very much my roommate's colors. And so that is sock number 1. And I'm just on the heel flap of sock number 2. My ring light turned off, and it took a second to restart the whole setup. Okay. What was I saying? I have been feeling second sock syndrome with this a little bit because I have been knitting a bunch of different gift socks, but now that I'm on the heel flap, I have been enjoying it again because I really enjoy doing heel flaps. That's the great thing about socks, beyond their portability and the easy memorizable nature of most vanilla sock patterns. Once you get bored of something, there's usually something new to do. I was getting bored of the leg. Yay, it was time to do the heel flap. I'm tired of the heel flap, time to turn that heel. I'm tired of turning the heel. Gusset decrease time. I'm tired of decreasing for the gusset. Oh, we've already done a significant portion of the foot, and it's now just plain knitting till the toe. I love socks. I'm very happy that my sock mojo is back, and I'm also very happy to be done the leg of this. So, yes, but this is a priority because her birthday is coming up and I have other gift knits going on. But yeah, if you wanted to see it, here's what this Let's Stay Home looks like in cake form and in mini cake form. The sock set. This counts as an entry for the Great Canadian Make-Along because this is a Canadian hand dyer. And I will link her down below. I'm not sponsored. I just want to share things with you guys. But why am I not just showing you the actual done sock? Yeah. So that's half object number 1. Half object number 2, I think, is gonna maybe come out of left field for you guys. Okay, so I have started spinning. I think I started in the summer, in August, and I surprisingly really enjoy it. I didn't think I would. For the longest time I thought, oh, spinning is like really cool, but it's not something I think I'd be very interested in. And it turns out that it soothes me like very little else in this world. There's just something about the repetitive movement and feeling the spindle glide and drafting that's just really nice. So you'll see in my acquisition section, I have been really good about not buying yarn, and I have been really bad about buying fiber. So I've been buying a lot of spinning fiber, and then I have been spinning with it. And so an acquisition that you will not see in its final form, in its original form, is the 50-gram braid of Corriedale that I bought from Some Nice Fibres. Hold on. Some Nice Fibres, who is B of the Maker Bee podcast, who I have recommended to you guys in the past on this very channel. But they have started dyeing some braids and also some yarn, and they did their first ever shop update, and they listed most of their things at a discount because they're just getting started, and I guess can't vouch for the quality yet, but I have found the quality to be excellent. And I got two, one of which is 50 grams of Corriedale in the colorway Beep Boop, hand dyed with love by B in Jabuktuk, which is on the eastern coast of Wisconsin, and in English is called Halifax, but it's a city out east. And I'll post the only photo I have even a little bit of this braid before I spun it, but then I've spun that yarn into a 2-ply, and then I have been knitting that yarn along with Jameson 2-ply Shetland sweater weight wool into mittens. So this contrast is the hand-dyed fiber that I got from B and have spun, and now it's mitten. I loved spinning it, and I have been really happy with how this mitten came about. This mitten pattern came from my head. It came to me in full form. I knew I wanted a spiral mitten, and I knew I wanted to use my handspun for it. And so then I went to Wabi Sabi and got 2 balls, because each of these is 25 grams of this to make this, and I'm really happy with it. I also did not expect the yarn to, okay, here's my ball of it. I didn't expect it to turn into this kind of yarn. The braid itself had a lot more like shocking pops of blue and shocking pops of pink and a lot of peach, but the way that I drafted it kind of blended those fibers together, so it had a lot more of a pastel-y final result that had more like long color transitions, which I personally find delightful. But I am quite nervous. I don't have enough to finish the second mitten. Here's the swatch I did to see if my mitten idea was going to work. I also, because what I did was I split the braid in half, and then I spun it all, and then I plied the 2 bits together. And that left me with quite a bit more of one of the 1-ply singles than the other. So I plied the leftovers with some 100% Ashford Corriedale that I had, so it's darker. So all of it's with blue, and then the color changing is happening. I'm sorry if this is so all over the place. I hope that I'm clear. I hope that you understand what I'm saying. I feel a little bit like, woo, so much to talk about, so excited about things. This yarn blocks out beautifully, specifically the Jameson Shetland jumper weight wool. I've used this for colorwork mittens in the past for my mother. It is so nice. It feels quite dry and sticky. I mean sticky in that it has a lot of scales, and so it wants to stick to itself, which makes it perfect for color work. And it comes in these 25-gram balls, which again are perfect for color work. And then it softens up so nicely with washing, and it evens out so nicely with washing. And it is really hiding a lot of the sins of how bad I am at spinning. Because, guys, I am not good at spinning. I just really like doing it. And let me show you up close. Like, look at that. Look at that. So much thick and thin. So many neps. so many things where it could be a lot better, but this Jameson is really saving me on that. And I have just started the second mitten. I'm going to have the spiral go the opposite direction for the second mitten, and that's been fun so far. And yes, other issues I have with my spinning, look at that, it's pigtailing. It's completely coming unplied. And then it's doing this. The twist is not even a little bit balanced, and I'm fighting it every step of the way. But I'm still enjoying the final product, and it's still just so satisfying to say, I spun that. I spun that into yarn, and then I knit it into a mitten. It makes me happy. I'm also pleasantly surprised by how well this pattern worked out. I really was flying by the seat of my pants on this. I did my tiny swatch. And as you can see, this is a lot more of a peachy orangey bit of that braid. And then I kind of put it on my hand, and I knew how many stitches I cast on for the swatch, and then I thought, okay, well, how much would I need for a mitten? And then I did that. I knew what number of I had to be working within the multiples of for the rest of it. The thumb increases to shape it. I don't know how I got that to work. And I didn't fully. I had to, here. I increased too much and then realized that the thumb was going to be huge. So then I had to kind of reallocate a bunch of those stitches back to the hand instead of the thumb. And then it kind of didn't work out in pattern. So here I am just awkwardly decreasing a bunch of stitches to have it match the rest of it. But who's gonna know? Like, I'm telling you guys because that's what we do here. But who's gonna know? And if my hand is waving around, who's gonna be looking at the little thumb armpit to see? But I am happy with, how I did the shaping for the thumb and how that's ended up. I had to redo this a couple times to get it to decrease at a rate that I was happy with that maintained this pattern and then also fit my hand nicely. But I did do that, and I'm very happy. And the one thing, well, no, there are several things, but the problem is I didn't write down anything that I was doing for this. I just assumed I would remember for the second mitten. I didn't even write down what my cast on was. So when I went to start the second mitten, I was like, how many stitches am I supposed to have? And I know that this thumb gusset kind of caused me problems when I was knitting it. And I ripped it out a couple times before I ended up doing what I did. Did I write down what that final thing that worked was as a note to me that has to make a second mitten? I did not. I'm just gonna do what I know when I'm supposed to start it. I know how I'm supposed to start it, and I hope that I remember how I'm supposed to finish it. But I at least remember what I'm supposed to do for the decreases, so that's that. But there are a couple of things I want you to take away from this section as I talk to you about this mitten. One, things don't have to be perfect for them to be good, for them to be wonderful, actually. My handspun, a mess. Is it still going to be a good mitten? Yes. Did it still make me very proud and happy to be making this mitten? Yes. Two, don't be afraid to self-draft stuff if you want to. If you don't want to, power to you. I almost always use a pattern. I love to use patterns. I love to follow somebody else's math and somebody else's instructions. I find it very restful. Doesn't mean I don't modify things, but it's really nice to trust in somebody else. And patterns are not usually very expensive, at least in my currency. And why not just use somebody else's beautiful design? But sometimes I think that we could all have a little bit more confidence in ourselves when it comes to having an idea and executing it. Like, obviously this is not the most complicated thing in the world, it's a mitten, but it was really satisfying to have an idea and see it to fruition, if that makes sense. And to not have to then hunt for a couple hours on Ravelry and Instagram and ask around to see if there is a pattern that matches exactly what I want in my head, which is something that I do so often. I have a vision of something that I want, and then I try and find a pattern, and I try and shoehorn a pattern into what it is that I'm looking for, and then I settle for something that's kind of in between. And I'm happy often with what I get, but I think that maybe we could all just have a little bit more confidence in ourselves when it comes to trusting our skills and knowing that we can always work back and just doing what we want to with our knitting and having a little bit of fun with it. If you don't want to do that, that's also okay. But if it's something that you've been thinking about, I think that you should try it because it's fun and it's really, really satisfying. But that's my second half finished object. And I guess sort of a finished object when it comes to spinning. I spun up yarn. And it was fun, and now I'm using it. Now we're in like true whip territory. And I am still working on my Pippin sweater by Sophie Hemmings, aka the Knit Pearl Girl. I finished this sleeve yesterday. I finished the body a week or two ago, and I'm on the second sleeve now. And I knit this kind of cropped, but anyway, the Pippin sweater is knit in all over sand stitch. It's this really nice knit pearl texture. I did a contrast inner hem with a much softer yarn because I don't like mohair against my neck, but this is knit in Knitting for Olive Merino in the color Dusty Dove Blue, and Shibui knits Silk Cloud Mohair in the color Graphite, which is kind of irrelevant because they've closed their operations and I got this on sale as part of their closing, but in case you're wondering where you can find it online, I'm sure you can still some places or on Ravelry. I have gone through periods of being really interested in knitting this and then not wanting to knit this at all, and it's not because of the pattern, it's just because of the mood I've been in. I have enjoyed this. I would like to preface this bit of medium criticism with saying that Sophie Hemmings is probably the designer I have knit the second highest amount of patterns of and by. I really like her designs. I really do. I wore the crescendo blouse that I test knit for her 2 winters ago to the office this week. I love it. I have the Aosta cushion. I have the Aosta baby sweater. I have knit the Aosta sweater before as my first ever sweater that I then turned into dryer balls because of no fault of the pattern and a ton of user error. I really like her designs. I do wish her patterns themselves were shorter. This is me guessing, but I get the sense that the Knit Pearl Girl got really big with the Aosta sweater, which is a beginner-friendly pattern. It is knit in a bulky weight, in a knit pearl texture, and a raglan, and the original version did not have short rows, which makes it very approachable and very beginner-friendly. And I think she writes a great beginner-friendly pattern. But I also get the sense that because it's such a beginner-friendly pattern, she has probably had to field no end of pattern support questions and like really basic stuff for more experienced knitters, like how do I substitute yarns? What's a gauge swatch? So all of that information is built into all of her patterns. And it means that they become very long very quickly. And I find it, I'm scrolling through like paragraphs upon paragraphs on knitting a gauge swatch, how to knit in the round, in order to get the information that I'm looking for, which then means I often scroll by the information I'm looking for as I'm trying to find things. And then there's stuff that I think I'm not even an advanced knitter, but people who are a little bit more used to knitting sweaters and wanting a bit more granular information, like don't usually find in her patterns, like a schematic with not just how long it should be or the bust circumference, but like upper arm circumference, sleeve length, things like that, which I usually kind of rely on in order to modify patterns. And I thought that was probably just a thing I was looking for it when I was knitting her Aosta baby sweater, and then I was like, oh, it's probably because baby sweaters maybe don't need a full schematic, even though in this particular sense I'm nervous and I want one. But it also wasn't in this, and I really wish there was a schematic, specifically because the sleeves felt so big. Like this is currently scrunched on a small needle, so you can't really see how big this armhole is, but when I separated for sleeves and body, I was genuinely concerned that I had done something wrong in how big these armholes were. And here I did a lot of rapid decreasing to shrink that down to make it less of a statement or baggy sleeve and match the project photos, but I know that I'm knitting for the almost on gauge. I'm like half a stitch off, which is something I knew going in and that I'm very comfortable with and happy with for this pattern. And so I was looking, trying to find the information on how wide these sleeves are supposed to be, and I couldn't find it, and I got a little frustrated and that's just a matter of personal preference. I'm finding that the more I knit, the more I want things like a schematic in a pattern, and I don't need to read in the pattern about different yarn options. That is a matter of personal preference, and just something to be aware of. Like, don't be alarmed if you download one of her patterns and it's 25 pages of text. Just like try and read through all of it to make sure you're not missing something, but you're okay, and it's not going to be complicated, and she's a very competent pattern writer. It's just, I get the sense that she really has had to spend a lot of time walking beginner knitters through like really basic things, and has kind of attempted to preempt really basic questions by putting all that information in the patterns. But for me, I got a little grumpy about it. And that's just part of my experience of knitting this pattern. It's not meant to be like a quality thing one way or the other. Regardless, I think this is going to be a good staple sweater. I really enjoy knit purl textures, both in terms of my knitting experience and also wearing them. And I think this will be very classic and also kind of jazzy. I would put this on, actually, you know what I will. So this sleeve is not actually that baggy at all. This is pretty perfect. This is exactly what I wanted. But a lot of the tester and like Ravelry photos have very baggy sleeves, which the pattern itself doesn't have, and so it ended up being a complete non-issue. I mean, I did do a lot, I decreased at a much faster rate than was called for in the pattern. Here's the body. I decided to knit this kind of cropped because I'm playing yarn chicken and because it's a more fitted sweater, and I thought that would look nice, and I think that it does. I just have to now knit the second sleeve. But overall, it's been fun to knit. I think I'm gonna really like what I get out of this, and I think this is gonna be a very useful addition in my wardrobe. I have a lot of like tan and taupe and white pants, not just blue denim, that this will go very well with. And I think it'll be wearable for both the office and my everyday life. Because I'm finding that the second it gets cold, all I really wear in the office are sweaters, which is nice. I also think it brings out my eyes in a way that I like. Yeah, I said it. And then my last whip is this sock. It's just a vanilla sock with 2x2 rib at the top that I'm making for my brother. He has requested another pair of socks this year, and he requested either a dark blue like this or a fun neutral because he just got a pair of swanky dark brown boots and he thought that this would complement those boots quite nicely. And I had this yarn in stash, which is usually what I want when I'm knitting people's socks. And it kind of worked out pretty perfectly. This is an unknown colorway of natural U yarn, but U spelt the sheep way, like E-W-E, which is a mother-daughter dyer duo and yarn store in Pictou, New Brunswick, I think, which is again on the east coast of Canada. And I love it so much. This is I think GOTS, G-O-T-S, Global Organic Textile Standard, certified organic merino yarn, and then they have, I think, it's superwash treated in a way that's supposed to be less harmful, and then it's recycled nylon. Here's what it looks like in the skein. I started caking it up, and then it got really tangled, and then I just balled up the rest of it. But I didn't expect it to have this kind of self-striping and self-patterning, and it has been so wonderful to work with. It's squishy, it doesn't have that sleek feeling that a lot of superwash sock yarns do. It feels really comfy and cozy and thick, but not more than it feels like a nice plump fingering weight yarn as opposed to knitting a DK weight sock. But this is otherwise just a 72 stitch on 2.25 millimeter needles vanilla sock, because I figured with the self-patterning, anything else would be too busy. And also, I gotta crank these out, man. But these have been really fun to knit when I'm bored of the texture of my knit purl sock or my knit purl sweater. And I think he's gonna really like them. And I got this yarn as a birthday gift. I gotta say, this is really making it hard to not go on their website right now and buy more of their yarn. I kind of forgot about them until I picked this up to make Julian his annual socks. And now I'm stalking their website and their Instagram to try and resist buying more of the natural U yarns. They have two colorways. I mean, most of their colorways are, in my opinion, gorgeous, but they have this colorway Red Fox from their Boreal collection that I saw. The knitting page found out about this yarn because I talked about it in my last podcast, and then she bought a bunch of the yarn, and I didn't know about their boil collection, and I learned about the boil collection from watching the knitting page, which I think is funny. But there's a red fox colorway in their boil collection that I want to make another like balaclava type hood out of so badly. And then they have a color called Athabasca Sand Dunes, which is this really gorgeous like seashell pink, and then this really gorgeous blue that I want for a pair of socks. But I'm not going to buy either of those things until I knit down my stash a little bit more or my self-control just breaks. Anyway, I recommend their yarns. I think that they have some really interesting colors that you don't see from a lot of other dyers, and they have some interesting bases like this organic and recycled one, and I think they do a lot of natural dyeing, which I appreciate. So these are my whips, and then I have one last whip, and you guys are going to laugh at me. I have attempted to weave. Okay, so I'm going to backtrack. I have been attempting to learn how to both spin and weave, and I knew that my first attempts at spinning yarn were going to be very bad because I was attempting to teach myself, and I'm not usually very good at hand-eye coordination related things very quickly, and I knew that it takes time to learn things. But I also didn't want to end up with a bunch of hand-spun yarn that I didn't want to use, because that's just junk. Like, that's just clutter in my house, and I am a renter, and I move somewhat often, and I didn't want to have to deal with it. So I thought, spin yarn that you know is going to be wonky, it's going to be thick and thin, it's not going to be good, but use it in knowing that it's going to go into a tapestry where all of those thick and thin bits, or those imperfections, or pigtailing, or all such things can be part of the design element instead. So that is what I did. I spent a fair amount of time spinning up yarn and practicing on different weights and breeds and things like that in order to make a little tapestry. And so then I wove that little tapestry. And this is what it looks like. So all of this is my hand spun, except for the work threads, which is just stash. And then this is not spun at all. This is just literal roving that I had left over. And this is my first ever hand spun down here. And so that's what I mean by leaning into the messiness of it to make it a design element. I think it worked out well. I'm calling this a whip because look at that fringe, it needs to be fixed. Like, I didn't even tie it off all very well. And then it's kind of coming undone a little bit here because I haven't tied that off very well and I don't know what I'm doing. And then also, I think I want to embroider little stars up in this bit. I think that would be neat. I think it would be very pretty. Some problems with this. 1, the fringe. 2, the edges. These are very messy. And I tried to make them not messy and it didn't work. I also found weaving in my ends to be quite difficult because I kept weaving them in and then like messing up the way that this was going and then having to do it more carefully because I'm just so used to weaving in my ends from knitting and having a little bit more, I think, stability in the fabric. And this dowel rod, I need to have an actual dowel rod to put this on because this is literally just the top of my frame loom that I'm using to make sure that this doesn't come undone and these don't get tangled. All of that to say, I love it. I think it's so cute and I think it's pretty. And I talked earlier in this season how much I'm drawn to blue and pink right now. This reflects that. It feels like a winter sunset in a way that makes me happy as opposed to sad as the sun sets as we approach winter at 4 p.m. And it was actually just very fun to do. It felt more like a creative exercise than I've had in a while because normally when I knit, like I said, I follow a pattern and it's less of a conscious thought process. I learn the pattern and I go to town knitting it, and sometimes I'm paying attention and sometimes I'm not, but usually I'm focused on something else. Whereas I just spent 2 evenings deciding what kind of stitch do I want next? What color do I want to have next? And those things, and that was really nice. And then I had to cut out several parts of the repeat because weaving does not take up nearly as much yarn as knitting does when you're doing plain weave like this. And so in order to have all the colors represented, I had to cut out a fair bit and then like, at what point am I going to do that? And things like that. But there's only, I think, 4 different types of weaving stitches in here. You have the sumac stitch, you have plain weave, you have oh gosh, I've forgotten what the other 2 I put in here are, what they're called. but this here is one of them, and then this here is another one of them. And then I did this one, which was like here, and then down here I did plain weave, but I pulled out every stitch so that it was like a big bump as opposed to here. And I think I'm going to hang this in our living room with my roommate's permission and look forward to future decorative weaving projects. I just had a really nice time, and I got the frame loom that I have. This is pretty much the largest size of anything I could make on that. I got it on Facebook Marketplace from a neighbor. It wasn't very expensive. It folds up into little pieces, as you can see, as I'm using this for something else right now. And I think I will use it to make coasters and bookmarks in the future with scrap yarn. But it was really nice. Oh, I also had to double warp my loom to do this because the pieces, it's all very far apart, the notches in my loom. But yeah, I made this. It's wonky, but I still am really happy with it. And when I look at it, I am soothed. Things to improve on in my weaving: fringe, and also keeping my edges much straighter than this. But it's pretty and I like it. And things don't have to be perfect in order to be lovable. So, those are all my active projects, and also my finished objects. And what do I have for acquisitions? At that trunk show, I also got this mini skein in this brown color to use as contrast for Charlotte Stone's coffee socks as well, because I have been missing color work, which is another reason why I cast these on. So for color work socks, I will use this mini at some point. And then I bought, has this just been out of on frame the whole time? Yeah, sorry about that. I guess I should actually like stop wearing a whip and put my shirt and vest back on. Hold on. Apologies for my ongoing lack of professionalism for my hobby YouTube channel. Okay. Acquisitions. I have quite a few because I have about 2 months of acquisitions to show you. Almost all of them are fiber, beyond the 2 skeins I just showed you. But first I will show you the thing that is not fiber. As I'm sure many of you already saw, Pom Pom Press and Pom Pom Magazine have announced that they are going out of business. I will be sad forever. And as a result, I have been buying a bunch of back issues to make sure I always have access. I know that they said that they will continue to have their digital copies up for sale on Ravelry and maybe their website for the foreseeable future, but I'm not willing to risk it. So I got volume 39, which is the rhythm issue, and it's winter 2021 at Wabi Sabi. Gorgeous, I like it. This is the one that I think was edited by, was it Lydia Morrow? Sorry, no, Lydia Gluck and Megan Fernandez. And there's a lot of really pretty patterns in here that I like and that I would like to knit one day. Like this. It's very nice, and I have seen, it's called Pink Noise, and I looked on Ravelry and there are some really pretty ones, and there's just kind of a lot that I would like to make. So I ordered this. I thought that I ordered the issue, was winter a few years back, that was edited by Nora Gone, as well as the newest issue, the winter 2023. And it turns out I hadn't. And so that back issue by Nora Gone is sold out forever. And I mean, I could get the digital version, but I wanted the physical version. And I have indeed pre-ordered, or I have ordered the newest issue, but rest in peace, Pom Pom, you shall be missed. It makes me nervous how many knitting-related businesses have gone under in recent years. And I also forgot I have a whip. This is a spinning whip, so we will talk about it very briefly. But I've just felt a lot of creative energy recently, and I've actually felt the energy and the ability to act on it, which has been really nice. I think it's because I'm finally done school, and I'm not doing school in all my free time where I'm not working. I just finish work and then think about my creative endeavors. I've also been reading a lot more, which has been just very good for my soul. But I have a squatter's quantity of this Durarum Natura Ulysse in the color Poivre et Sel, salt and pepper, in stash that I got to make the Ovis. No, I got to make the Pippin sweater, actually, the blue one that I was showing you guys. And then I decided that I didn't want to make it in that, and I thought I was going to use this as the main color for an all-over colorwork sweater by the Petite Knitter, not Petiteknit, called the Ovis sweater, but this is a sport weight, and the sweater I was thinking of is a fingering weight yarn with a 30 stitch gauge, and there was no way I was going to get 30 stitches with this and be comfortable, and there was no modification I could think to make that I would be comfortable with that large of a discrepancy in gauge. So this has been sitting in stash, and it's really nice yarn. And I was looking at my spinning fiber after I finished spinning the stuff for my tapestry and for these mittens, and I was thinking, well, what do I want to do next? And I personally find it easier to start spinning if I know what it is that I'm going to be spinning for, because I just do. And I had this braid of Norwegian luster wool from Emily C. Gillies, House of Wool, which is Emily C. Gillies' kind of rebrand, in the color Foliage, which is a gradient yarn that goes from this green to that kind of greeny yellow to these reds. And Norwegian luster wool is apparently one of the oldest still existing fiber or wool sheep breeds. And it's quite hard wearing. It has a very long staple length, and I used it for this, so I'm kind of comfortable with spinning with it as much as I am comfortable spinning anything. And I originally got that braid because it was like $22 and it was gorgeous, and also because I thought I would make another tapestry. But I just this image of a sweater came into my mind. It was a saddle shoulder with like a leaf motif going down the saddles and going down the front. And I wanted to make it using that foliage braid, which I have started spinning. You can see here. I haven't gotten to that dark red yet. That's the bit that I have left with this. And I think that these will be really nice together. I have done up the charts for it, and I knit this really big swatch to get a sense of like the fabric that I'd get and the stitch counts to do the math for the charts. And I think I just have to wait a little bit longer for the daylight savings ending induced darkness madness to have the hubris to cast on a self-drafted flat colorwork saddle shoulder handspun sweater. So that's what I'm currently spinning for. You can expect updates on this project soon, and probably updates in the form of why did I think this was a good idea, why did I think I am capable of doing this. But in the meantime, I'm having fun spinning, and I'm having fun doing the charts for that. And I hope I end up with a sweater that I like. But if not, I learned. Okay, so, yeah, I got Pom Pom Mag. I got those skeins of yarn. I got a bunch of braids of fiber. I got a second one from Some Good Fibres, aka B of the Maker Bee podcast. So I got that 50 grams of Corriedale, and then I also got 100 grams of Targhee in this different shades of pink. And this is grown and prepped also in Canada. And this is 100% Targhee in the colorway Biblically Accurate Barbie, which I do think is so funny. And this feels so nice. There's just something so like fluffy and gorgeous about this, and it's so soft. And I think this is going to be really nice. But the thing is this was going to be my next spin, not the foliage, but I can't figure out what I want from this. Because right now it feels soft enough to have around my neck. So there's part of me that thinks spin this up into a worsted weight and then make a fun hood out of it, but then I think, is that really the best move? Or like a chunky toque, which is the Canadian word for hat. And I don't know, but I love it. I love touching it. I made my roommate touch it and she also loves it. And it's just, hand feel alone, Targhee's currently my favorite spinning fiber. I also like how much spinning has taught me about the different types of fibers very quickly. But yeah, so if B ever does another shop update for some nice fibers, I recommend. Next, I went to the Ottawa Valley Weavers and Spinners Guild Exhibition and Sale, which is an annual event they hold in Ottawa. I have taken a workshop with the guild before to learn how to weave on a rigid heddle, which is different than the loom that I used for that, and I loved it. I love the sale and exhibition. I love talking to guild members. They are such kind and knowledgeable people. They have demonstrations and they do all sorts of things, and I went with my friend. And while we were there, I got a hand towel as a housewarming gift for a friend, which I gave to her. But I got a Nitty Naughty because I really needed one. I have no idea how much yarn I spin. I do by weight because I can weigh it, and also I know how much fiber I started with. But I have no idea in terms of length. I'm eyeballing it. There's a very good chance I'm gonna run out of that yarn for my mittens, but I cast on anyway because I was just kind of hoping. But a Nitty Naughty helps you understand, it helps skein up the yarn that you just spun, which I need because I don't have a Swift. I just have a ball winder, and at any given moment I am struggling to wind up my hanks of hand spun in order to wash, finish, dry them, etc. So I got this Nitty Naughty from a man, from Donald Haynes Woodworker in Constance Bay, Ontario. It's made out of walnut and cherry. It was $40, and I consider it $40 very well spent because I had really wanted a Nitty Naughty, and I had gone into that sale looking for a Nitty Naughty. This will make it so much easier to skein up my yarn, it'll be so much easier to finish it, and to know what the length is, because you can use this to wind up the yarn onto this thing, and then you count the strings you have, and that's how you know how much you have. So yeah, really excited about this. And then he gave me like care instructions and told me how to fix things, and it was just really useful. So thanks, Donald. Next, I got 3 50-gram braids of merino from Moppy Creations, Wool and Textile Arts, and because it was a buy 2 get 1 free situation, and they were gorgeous. So I got these 3, and I got these 3 for $28 total, because each one is, what is it, $14 for 50 grams of hand-dyed merino. It's a pretty good price. And then I got 1 free. So do these have colorways on them? No. But I got this one, which has these berry pink bits and then some yellow. I got this one, which has a bunch of pops of color, and then in this very light green base. And then I got these pretty blues. I haven't spun with merino yet. I'm practicing on every other longer fiber before I start, but I'm also thinking I have a lot of crafters in my life now, which is a beautiful change. I didn't used to, but I have a lot of friends who make stuff with yarn, and I think it would be nice to one day be able to gift some of my friends hand-spun yarn. And I know a lot of my friends have some amount of wool sensitivity, so I am amassing different merino braids so that I can eventually spin merino for them. Yeah, those are my acquisitions. And so as I sit here in a pile of things, I am feeling a little frazzled and like I'm forgetting something. Okay, I have a lot of things on the go right now. I have 3 pairs of socks, I have a sweater, and I have mittens. And several of those things that I have on the go are gifts with approaching deadlines. I also have yet to cast on my grandfather's annual socks. My goal is to finish all but one of these whips by the end of November, which I think is doable. The socks for my roommate absolutely need to be done by the end of this month because her birthday rapidly approaches. I would like to finish the socks for my brother also, I think by the first week of December, because I'm going to go hang out with him and my dad for a week in the middle of December, and I don't want to be knitting these in front of him. I would like to be knitting our grandfather's socks. And I would like to finish my pippin sweater because I only have a sleeve left, and I started it in September, and I think it's just kind of been on the needles too long. So I guess that leaves the one thing that it is okay to still be working on be my handspun mittens. And that's normal and fine. That's okay. No problems with that. But I am very much starting to think about, okay, what do I want to finish by the end of the year? What are my timelines? What do I think will make me feel good to be working on and to be done? And I think that's roughly it. But I think that I will come to the next podcast episode and say, hey guys, I finished all those things. And what I want is to start my grandfather's socks by the second week of December. I want to do them 2 at a time. I want to try 2-at-a-time socks. I think that will make that last pair of gift socks a lot less tedious. And I want to finish these mittens by the end of 2023. And I want to fit in one more sweater project for myself. I think it'll be the Fortune sweater by Petiteknit in some gray yarns that I have and that I've had in stash for a while, because I really like the Fortune sweater. I wear mine a lot in the spring and fall months, and then as a layer in cooler evenings in the summer. And I want a winterized version of it, and that's what that will be. And I think that'll be a good amount of familiar and interesting in December. I'm also thinking I might start this sweater, my handspun FIBRES project, but I imagine it's going to be frustrating at several points, and I don't think that's a good idea to do in the last push for gift knitting. I feel like that'll be too much stress at one time. I'm also considering starting my storm sweater, but I don't know, I was so interested in that pattern. I had the yarn, I was so raring to go for that, and then I think I've maybe just like had my fill. I've seen enough of other people's storm sweaters and I feel satisfied, if that makes sense, that I don't need to make it myself, but I still think it would be beautiful. I've also just kind of been like a little bit turned off by the amount of complaints I've heard about that pattern and how the writing maybe isn't ideal and how there are mistakes in the translations and mistakes in the pattern and how some of the numbers are a little bit strange in terms of grading. So I don't know about the storm sweater, but if I don't make the storm sweater, I don't know what I would want to do with that amount of of undyed white wool that I have. I think it would be really beautiful in a storm sweater, so I don't know about that. I'm also a little bit, like, I will not lie to you and say I'm trying to be strategic in what I cast on next to use up the most amount of stash yarn to get as close to possible as my original goal for this year, which was to be down 2,023 grams of yarn for 2023, which was a challenge started by Rachel is Knitting, also here on YouTube. I don't think I'm going to make that, but I'm going to be close. And in part because I'm not counting my handspun. So my thought is, if I knit the storm sweater, it's at a pretty big gauge, so I'll get like 400 or 500 grams of yarn out of stash, and that might just put me over in time. But I don't want to be rushing through something just to meet an arbitrary deadline that I set for myself. It's just a fun goal, because that takes the fun out of it. So that's also on my mind. I'm also trying to think, what are my goals for next year's knitting a little bit? I think I want to do another yarn tracker in and out, and maybe do 1,000 grams of yarn out of stash for 2024, even though it doesn't have the same fun ring to it as 2023 for 2023. But I will start counting my handspun in that. But I have 4 sweaters I can think of. Or, okay, 2 sweaters and a vest? What's the 4th one? What am I forgetting? I don't know. I can think of at least 2 sweaters and a vest that I want to make next year using yarns that I don't have in stash. So that's 3 garment quantities that I know I will be purchasing. I also have a trip to Europe coming up in the summer of next year, and I know I will be purchasing yarn there. One of my friends is getting married in Germany, close to her family, so I'm saving up and planning a lot for that trip and really looking forward to buying some European yarns. And so I need to, I think, sit down with myself and be realistic about what is an achievable goal and what is a fun goal, if that makes sense, because I want to be mindful of my consumption, I want to be mindful of my stash, I want to be buying and making things with intention, but I also want to be having fun, because this is first and foremost my hobby and I guard that very carefully, as I think a lot of us do. So those are kind of some of my thoughts at the end of this year. Sorry, I guess it is approaching the end of this year by the Gregorian calendar, and that's what's on my mind. I'm hoping to release, so if you didn't see, I did a pattern inspiration roundup video, but based on patterns I think a forest witch would make for Halloween, and that was a lot of fun. And I know that's not something that's interesting to everybody, but I think I might, first of all, thank you to all of those people who received that very warmly and sent me encouragement. I'm glad that it was fun for you guys too. But secondly, I think that it's just kind of a fun outlet or organizing scheme to be introduced to new patterns that you might not otherwise see. So thank you to the people who sent me other ideas for that. Kate, I do think I will be doing a Disney princess one. I think that's so fun, and I already have a bunch of patterns saved for it. But I think next will be patterns I think a main character in a generic stereotypical Hallmark Christmas movie would wear. I'm picturing chunky beanies, I'm picturing cowls, I'm picturing cables. And so I think I'm going to do that video soon. And then hopefully have a whole bunch more fun new patterns to show you soon. And also more mittens. I think you guys can all be prepared to see more mittens from me soon. Okay. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope the quality was not crap. And I hope that we talk again soon. Okay. Podcast recommendation, Tar Knits, T-A-R Knits. She is a newer podcast. We have been DMing for a while, and she is a natural. She's based out of Toronto, knits all sorts of stuff, also really enjoys Petiteknit, but the way Tar is able to present herself to the camera, it took me months to be able to feel that natural and to come across like I do in person. Like, I talk to the camera like the way I talk to my friends, and that was not something I was able to do at the beginning. And watching like Tar's literal first podcast episode, I was like, how are you so good at this so fast? And so I think that you should watch her videos. I think that you will enjoy them. I think that they're fun. I think they're conversational. She made me laugh out loud to several points in her videos. And if you like me, I think you'll like Tar. So, oh my God, am I saying that right? Tar, is it Tar or is it Tear? Tear Knits? T-A-R? Oh my goodness. I'm realizing we've never talked in person and I don't know. Ooh, I'm so sorry. Okay. Regardless, people should watch your videos. Okay, all right. I hope you're well. I hope you're happy. I hope you're stretching your wrists and your elbows to avoid the repetitive stress injuries that I developed over the summer. And I hope we talk again soon. Okay,